The year is 1932 and the Great Depression is at its peak. Unemployment levels are at all-time highs and widespread poverty is evident throughout the United States. This would become even more clear if one were to venture into Macon County, Alabama. In Macon County, the population was predominantly African American. This population consisted of many sharecroppers, which is a farmer who works on another farmer's land for a cut of the crops harvested. This is where the Tuskegee experiment, the infamous study that is the topic of today's video, took place. The U.S. Public Health Service came to Macon County in 1932 with the promise of treatment for bad blood, which they conducted phony tests for upon arrival. Under the guise of receiving treatment for this bad blood, 600 African American men were enrolled into the medical program at the Tuskegee Institute. They were also promised meals on treatment days, and most importantly, treatment for their illness. Of course, this was all just to trick the men into joining the study so that they could be observed and documented rather than actually help. The true intentions of the study were actually to observe the effects of untreated syphilis in African American men. This is why of the 600 men enrolled, only 399 actually had syphilis. The other 201 were what was known as a control group, which is a standard to which comparisons are made in an experiment. Throughout the course of the study, the men received their meals as promised, but also had to undergo very painful bogus procedures such as spinal taps and injections. This is only the beginning of the evils committed by the U.S. government during this study, though. The worst was yet to come. As the world moved forward through the decades, and while new medical breakthroughs and societal reforms came about, the experiment persisted. This is the middle stages of the Tuskegee study, a period marked by relentless cruelty and a dark refusal to change course. The 1940s brought the discovery of penicillin, a reliable treatment for syphilis, and what should have marked the end of the 600's suffering. Despite the ready availability of penicillin, the researchers remained steadfast in their grim mission. The study's leaders chose to continue observing the progression of the disease, prioritizing their so-called research over the lives of the men they had deceived. This was no longer about science, it was about the perversion of power and control. As the years passed, the impact of untreated syphilis became increasingly dire. Men endured several health complications including blindness, neurological damage, and early death. Families were shattered, lives were cut short, and the study's disregard for human suffering became even more apparent. As the study began to become more and more detrimental, suspicions began to be raised and questions asked. Why were the men still not cured yet? Why was this taking so long? Still, the government held out. The men were still fated to suffer, all because of racial prejudice and unfiltered human evilness. Throughout the 1940s and 50s, many more men suffered and died due to their syphilis. Their unawareness of the syphilis inside of them due to the deceit of the doctors kept them believing that the best thing they could possibly do was continue to attend the medical program and hold out hope that they would eventually be cured. In the 1960s, more civil reforms began to occur, especially in the realm of racial reforms. This in turn led to even more questions about the experiment. The facade began to crumble as no men benefited from the study and many died or had their condition worsened. As the 1970s dawned, the world was on the cusp of a revelation that would expose a harrowing chapter of betrayal and ethical failure. In 1972, the walls of silence surrounding the Tuskegee study began to crumble. A brave whistleblower, Dr. Peter Buxton, exposed the truth to the press, revealing the cruel deception and inhumanity that had been concealed for decades. The public outcry was immediate and explosive. The revelations ignited a firestorm of outrage. Congressional hearings were held, and the study was condemned in the court of public opinion. The nation was forced to confront the ugly reality of its own making, a study that had violated the most basic principles of ethics and human dignity. In 1972, when the study came to an end, only 74 of the original 600 participants remained. Upon learning the news of being lied to for 5 decades, many faced struggles mentally, knowing that they could have been cured 30 years ago. Subsequent lawsuits followed the end of the study, and rightly so. Millions of dollars were awarded to the survivors of the experiment. In the wake of the scandal, a formal apology was issued by President Bill Clinton in 1997, acknowledging the grave injustices inflicted upon the participants and their families.
On behalf of the American people, what the United States government did was shameful, and I am sorry.
This was a step toward healing, but it also underscored the deep scars left by the study's legacy. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing, as I will be putting out more just like it in the future. With that, I'm going to conclude the video. Thank you for watching.